So, I'll explain this very simply. The United States government is putting hazardous chemical drugs in the food supply. And these drugs have side effects. I want you to remember that all drugs have side effects. I want you to look on your bread, pasta, rice, flour, the cookies, many of the snacks. If they contain niacin, riboflavin, folic acid, thiamine mononitrate, those are drugs. Those are chemical drugs. Niacin and riboflavin are hazardous material. So the very first issue is that all drugs have side effects. And that's why it's ignorant to administer drugs through the food supply. Because number one is that the person has to be informed that they're being given a drug. Now, I'm pretty sure that most of you who have heard this for the first time didn't know that niacin is a drug. It is. Look it up. It has side effects. So the informed consent part has already been broken by the United States government. The second part is that you need to know how much of the drug you're taking. So let's say that you agreed to taking the drug, you need to know how much is in the food, how many milligrams. And then you need to know how to schedule how many things you're eating. If you're going to eat, bread, pasta, rice, cookies in one day, that could be a high dose of those drugs. So that leads to the third thing, is that you want to monitor for side effects immediately. In case anything did come up, you would lower the dosage immediately. Which, again, even before then, you'd say how much does the person weigh in order to even prescribe a dose, and you try your best to gauge, to calculate it based on what the patient is exhibiting. But instead of all that, in terms of medicine and being an actual doctor and practicing medicine and caring about you, the United States government decided in 1943, through the War Foods Administration, who issued the War Food Order Number 1, which made enriched bread the temporary law of the land. Listen, when they're talking about enriching the bread, they're talking about adding chemical drugs to the bread. Those chemical drugs, as all drugs do, have side effects. And that's why it is absolutely ignorant to administer drugs through the food supply. So from 1943 to now, I want you to look at your society. And I want you to realize that your society is literally filled with disease. These man-made chemical drugs have to be examined. The whole point is that if you're going to be administering drugs, you need to do it on a one-by-one basis, a doctor and a patient relationship. You would never administer drugs through the food supply because you cannot control the dosage. And I think one of the most important things to remember is that as a human ages, they don't usually get better at excreting hazardous material. They usually get worse. So you can imagine that even if the drugs that were being administered through the food supply were somehow good at an early age, there's going to come a point in a person's life where they simply have to stop consuming those hazardous material chemical drugs, because they're going to start showing ailments. They're going to have ailments popping up because they're experiencing an overdose at that point. Their body's not excreting the toxicity that is the direct result of these chemical drugs, which the United States government, for some reason, is ignorantly allowing to be administered through the food supply. We can do much better as a society. We can really do so much better as doctors, as humans, to care enough about each other that we would have ways to monitor for side effects. We'd have ways to determine how much of something somebody needed. It wouldn't be a one-size-fits-all, let's dose the population with this. You wouldn't do it that way, because there's so many things that can go wrong and that are guaranteed to go wrong. And that's why it's criminal. And that's what everyone needs to realize. Take care, everyone. And together, we stop this New World Order.